Welcome to A Women's Brew, where women talk about beer. In today's episode, we're joined by Kate, the badass brewer at Hand Brew Co. I'm Joanne, and this is Tori.
Hello, hello.
And we're two beer-loving women on a mission to get more people drinking and talking about great beer. Come join us.
Well, we are joined today by Kate. I'm so excited. Friends, I feel like every time when I talk about you, I just start doing this as well. I go. For anyone that's watching the video, you'll have to watch the video. But I'm like, oh, friends, this is great. People might recognise you from the last time that you were on one of our Brave Noise episodes. In the off chance people don't know you, don't know who you are, don't know your role, could you please introduce yourself?
Chris.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Kate Hyde. I am the head brewer and product director, which is a new role. I'm not quite sure what it means, but let's just say head brewer at Hand Brew Co. We're a small independent brewery down on the south coast. When I say the south coast, and I don't really specify, that's because we sort of started in Brighton. Currently our production's based in Worthing, so we're sort of multifaceted, multi-location brewery. We still have our tiny little tower brewery in the Hand in Hand pub in Brighton, which is where we started. If you want, I'll tell you a bit more about that later. And that's still a functioning brewery and has been for 40 years. But then alongside that, we have a larger production facility, which you'll both know from attending Women's Day, which is down the coast in Worthing, which is about 10 miles west of Brighton. And it's a lovely custom built gravity, not gravity fed, it's like made by gravity systems, steam powered. Yeah, it's all singing, all dancing, very, very nice and friendly to use after years of struggling sacks of malt up the stairs to a 5-story tower brewery that actually is a gravity fed brewery. So it's a glorious space to brew, and it's a wonderful place for us to really dial in the beers that we were making in that smaller kit. We started as a brewery in a pub, so really I think our objectives were to make beers for the pub. And so our core range is very much built around that ethos, this idea of like the DNA of the brewery is pub drinking. It's pints, it's sessionability, it's bringing people together, it's accessibility. All of our drinks are vegan. A lot of our core range is gluten free. The ABVs are very pintable. They're designed to be delicious. If you like good beer, you can have a good time dissecting it and untapping it and inhaling it and zhuzhing it around in your mouth. But if you also don't know that much about beer, but you like a cold pint, it's the kind of thing that's not going to put you off with anything too intense. So very, I think, approachable and unifying. And then beyond that, we since we've moved into the big brewery and we've been able to sort of get those beers really dialed in and kind of start gathering data and using like really efficient boils and wonderful cooling and all of these just really, really high tech things to kind of make our beer as fine tuned as we'd like it to be. We've been able to have a little fun on the side and, start playing around with things like Women's Day brews and specials, seasonals. We do a lot of our specials in the little tower brewery in Brighton still because it's a lot smaller. It's an 800 litre kit. Up in Worthing, it's a 25 hectolitre kit, which we'll often turn twice in a day. So it's the capacity is vast. The difference in capacity is vast, but it's just a different mood brewing in the two places. The Hand Brewery is this, it's kind of like it's an elaborate homebrew kit really. So there's a lot of just very sensory, there's a lot of sensory involvement in what you're making. When you're looking at the mashing, you're adding the grain to the water, and it's really up to you to look at that and go, oh, that flow looks too fast, oh, that looks too wet, oh, that looks too dry, or I'm going to slow this down a bit, I'm going to stir this a bit faster. And it's one of those brew kits where people talk about the art of brewing and the sense of brewing, and it's one of those sorts of brew kits where you really do have to touch the pipes to go, Oh yeah, the cast out's at the right temperature. That feels like if I was outside and it was that cold, I'd want to put a jumper on. So I think we're okay, kind of thing.
Brilliant.
And so it's that's the hand kit. So that's our fun little kind of laboratory of crazy. And then we've got our lovely big, shiny, all singing, all dancing brewery where we like to make our core beers and the things that we kind of put out a bit more with more regularity. So yeah, it's nice to have the opportunity to brew in two types of environments on two types of sets, really, I guess. And you know, to have this small kooky little space where you really are like digging out the mash tun and walking through the pub, because by that point everyone's in the pub and they're all sitting there looking at you, and you're walking through with a big soggy wet bag of malt on your shoulder, having just gone down 5 flights of stairs, and you've got to do it 10 more times, and they're all just saying, "You all right, Kate? Do you want a hand?"
Yeah, pretty much done it now, but thanks.
Yeah, good. Nice of you to ask right at the end of the job there, though.
That sounds just like an insane visual, though, of just like walking through the pub. It's over your shoulder. Like, all right.
Campus, yeah. So there's two very different breweries. I've kind of completely gone off topic. I was just sort of trying to tell you about who we are and where we come from. But I suppose I feel like we're from both of those places, and it's really difficult to describe Hand Brew Co without talking about this pub tower brewing heritage. Even though we've got this wonderful kit, and even though that's the kit that everyone knows, that's what everyone comes for Women's Day, we're doing more and more collabs on that kit too. So when people come down and brew with us, we tend to do it at the big shiny brewery. But it's just such a part of our heritage. It's such a part of our personality. And even as the brand grows, outside of Sussex, outside of Brighton, it feels so important to remember this kind of this nucleus of where it all came from, because I think that feeling of being at the heart of a community and making beer for that community, and like the importance of bringing people together over, you know, whether it's a beer or a cup of tea, it doesn't really matter. It's bringing people together and creating this hub for people, like a safe space. I hate that phrase, it's really overused and sort of definitely not using it in the right context, but yeah, I think it's important to remember where we came from, especially as we grow, which is hopefully what's happening.
I mean, I did have a note anyways to ask about that, because I remember the first time when you were on talking about the Brave Noise and you were talking about that background really high level and talking about the space, and I was just like, that sounds so cool. And I was like, for anyone that didn't listen to that, I was going to ask you about that anyways. So I feel like you already beat me to that. So that's really, really great, because I remember when you first said it thinking like, that seems really cool, very vibey, as I feel like younger people say. Vibey. I can't think of another word that like makes sense other than just being like vibey.
No, sorry, that's perfect.
That's perfect. Thank you. Speaking of, I've got more questions on this anyways, but speaking of, the beer that we're drinking today is Shimmy Up, which, talking about our International Women's Collaboration Brew Day, we got to go. Joe and I both got to go there. We're going to talk way more about that after, but just so that we can introduce what we're drinking, because I've been like not so secretly sipping away at it, and it is really, really lovely. Do you want to tell us about the beer before we get into any other questions while I get to drink a little bit more?
Absolutely. We'll touch on Women's Day later, I think, but so the beer is a double IPA. I've brewed it in kind of more of a West Coast style, or what I like to affectionately call mountain IPA. I don't know if that's a thing. It's something we sort of made up last year.
Definitely a thing for a while there, so I think you're good there.
Cool. I didn't make it up. No. That makes me feel both sad and happy at the same time.
Sorry, I totally burst your bubble there. That's my bad.
So it's I'd like to think of it as kind of a mountain IPA. I'm really, really affectionate about West Coast beers and those kind of early days of craft, you know, kind of like 2012, 2013, those kind of double IPAs that we would get across from America when we were all starting to learn about craft beer. And they would just had this like richness and this vinous quality. There was a dry finish to them. And the bitterness really, really balanced. It was sort of much more resinous. And they just, for me, felt like such a step on from and I loved all the beers that we were drinking standard, like all, you know, normal strength beers, but like you'd see a dipper on and you'd be like, oh, I'm going to have that. I'm so excited. And I'd like think about it all night and be all excited about it. And like, you know, plan what I was going to drink from the tap list, and like almost set myself a schedule, because I could be a bit like that. And I love those beers so much. And obviously they vanished a little bit as brewing grew up, you know, or developed and evolved. And, you know, we discovered NEPAs, and they have been so dramatic. They've had such dramatic influence on our industry. And they are delicious, and they've brought so many new drinkers into the fold, and they've themselves evolved into subcategories. And what I love about this sort of current iteration of brewing is that everything sort of is constantly changing and constantly feeding, and trends are coming and going, and things are going back, and things and everything like that. And, you know, it's almost impossible to judge beer anymore, because there's just no styles anymore. There's sort of a rough outline, but really, what is it? It's whatever I tell you it is. So I have this very nostalgic feeling about those early dippers. But I also really, really love the aroma that we've been getting through these kind of, with some of the new hop innovations. Just sort of these very vibrant tropical smells. Like, you know, if you think back to, you know, 15 years ago, it almost unheard of, you know, kind of, you had Citra.
Yeah.
That's
about it.
And it's just so gorgeous, like the way it's evolved, and hop growers have kind of been crossbreeding, and we've seen this like real innovation from the hop industry, not just with the products they've been breeding, but the way they've been processing them for use, so that they've been more efficient for brewers to use, but also getting more dynamic aromas out, or more dynamic bittering out. So I've worked with Joe, full disclosure, we worked together on this.
We did.
To be fair, I want to be really clear as well. Like that connection though is not. We weren't like, oh, because you guys work together, that's why we want you on. I was gonna get the beer anyways, and I was like, I just want to talk to Kate again. Yeah. So I don't want anyone to think that this was like an affiliated.
No, you won't have to put that thing on your Instagram. We say this is an advert.
This is not an advert. This is not affiliate link.
But if anyone wants to buy the beer as a result of listening to this, and it does actually act inadvertently like an advert, no, I won't be upset about it at all.
Yeah, we will put that in the show notes. So.
I won't be mad about it. I'm just saying, like, this is not a conspiracy. This is not a conspiracy.
No conspiracies here. So where did we get to? Oh yeah, so basically I was working with Joe. We were talking about how could Bart Haas get involved with our Women's Day brew, and I was sort of saying, this is kind of what I'm imagining. I want to brew this kind of mountain dipper. I want it to be bright, I want it to be bitter, I want it to be kind of chewy, maybe drier than some of the NEPA kinds that you're getting out at the moment, but I want this really bright aroma. I want a really tropical, lovely aroma. And I've been hearing a lot about this crush hop.
And wink, wink.
Wink. And so Joe was like, well, that's great, we've got some crush, but we've also just put crush into Spectrum, which is it's like a liquid. I don't even know. Can you explain it, Joe?
So it's basically okay. Well, like, let me put my work hat on here. A women's brew is not affiliated to.
I was going to say, but you've got me doing. I feel like I've gone to places and talked to them about hot products, because I'm like, oh well, I can tell you about that. Hang on, let me tell you about it.
Other hot merchants are available. We are a bipartisan podcast. But Spectrum is a liquid dry hopping product. And it is as close to like the getting a pellet of hop into a liquid as you can get. It's got all the good stuff in it, but all the leaf matter has been taken away. So you've got all that bright aroma and flavour in there, but you haven't got the leaf matter that is then sucking away your beer. So you get all this great impact, and you get extra yield of your beer, which is amazing.
Yeah. It's very economical, isn't it?
Yes, great.
It's sustainable.
It's better for cleaning, more efficient.
Oh yeah, completely. And like, we'd not made a beer with the Spectrum product before, but we were Spectrum curious.
Yes.
And so Joe was like, why don't we use you as a guinea pig? And I was like, yeah, 100p. So we use Spectrum in the dry hop and also in the whirlpool.
Because it can be loose there. That's not how we formulate it, but you can also do it.
Well, that was well, like you were kind of like, well, we think you can use this in a whirlpool, and we'd quite like to give it a go. And I was like, well, look, this is a special. It's a one-off. You know, no one's going to be upset. It's we don't have to meet a flavor that people already know. You know, if it turns out one way or it doesn't turn out, you know, let's have a play. This is what specials are for. They're for experimentation and learning and creating and coming together. So we did some of that. So we got some in the whirlpool and also in the dry hop. We also used some Citra and some Chinook alongside Citra, just to kind of give a kind of a back note to the crush, because honestly I didn't quite know what to expect from it, so I just thought let's stick with something we know, just to kind of give us a kind of baseline. And the Chinook obviously just a little to the West Coast, and I think it's just a really nice kind of low note in hopping anyway. I think it's it just gives you this lovely kind of herby, resiny, kind of like a background. It's a really good supporting actor, I think.
Yeah.
So we did some Chinook and some Citra in there, but Crush really was the star of the show. And I think it's like the pineapple that comes off of this.
100%.
I was going to say, it is that the fruitiness, because you do still have that like West Coasty bitterness, but it's so balanced. But like normally, obviously, when you get like the West Coast, you don't tend to get too much like of these type of fruits in that. And I think like the fruits getting, like you said, the pineapple is so lovely. I'm like exactly as you said, and you have those like those more like resinous-y type notes are definitely far more the supporting, as you said. Like you can that is so kind of mild beyond the crush. It's really nice.
Thank you. I'm really happy with this beer. I'm conscious that there's dippers on the market that are in a different style that are probably veering more towards the hazy, with the very kind of aroma forward and light bitterness and the kind of higher finishing gravities. And I just wanted to do something different. I just wanted to do something that felt important and romantic and exciting to me. So hopefully people will drink it and feel the same way. I'm glad that you like it. I'm very happy with it. I'm really happy with it. It's got quite a low finishing gravity, which I quite enjoy. That sort of dryness just sort of makes it a little bit easier to keep drinking, I think. And it's sort of, especially with that kind of very fruity tropical nose and kind of first aroma hit, it sort of just it feels to me like I'm really happy with the balance on there. I'm really pretty chuffed.
So I'm not usually a massive like bitterness person either. So like I'm really sensitive to bitterness. Yeah. And I feel like it is just the perfect, for me, it's the perfect balance. I think it is similar to like, I think a lot of people assume if I go like, oh, I'm really sensitive to bitterness, they're like, oh, you hate West Coast. Like, no, I don't hate West Coast. It's just like, for me, they have to be more balanced out in a way. And I find that it's like when you got like, you know, Elusive's Oregon Trail, for example, like that to me, like so well balanced. And this to me, that balance of the bitterness is so spot on for me in my taste buds that it, you know, if somebody hears West Coast, if somebody's listening to this and they go, oh, I don't normally like West Coast because I don't normally like how bitter sometimes they can be, you know, take it from a person that doesn't normally do bitterness. It is beautiful because it is balanced so well. And I do get what you're saying about sort of like that nostalgic romantic, like I don't know how to explain it in terms of like tasting notes. All I can do is like, when you're talking about that nostalgic sort of like romantic, I'm like, I actually get that.
And I think it was like right to go down the West Coast style with this, because I think if you'd have gone for a hazy or for, you know, a New England style, I think it would be too syrupy. But because you've got that amazing pineapple when you first open it, there's a bit of like fruit salad in there, and then you've got that little seasoning condiment from Chinook in there, and the bitterness, it does just all balance out lovely. And I think if you're like you were saying, if you're a West Coast, you're not normally a West Coast person, but if you're not like, you know, that really resinous West Coast person, this has got a bit more fruit about it. Yeah. So that might tempt
makes
you
it more approachable. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, I feel like I've just been jaded by, as a person that is a New England, I'm a New England IPA person. Being from New England, I'm like, yep, that's my jam. I think I've just been jaded because there are so many New England IPAs that when you have like a dipper that's not a big juicy juice bomb, it's kind of nice because you're a little bit like, it's when you go someplace and you're like juice bomb, juice bomb, juice bomb, stout.
Yeah.
Lager, and then you're like, cool. So like when there's one that's like a dipper that's not just a straight up like hazy juice bomb, sometimes it's kind of nice because you go, I haven't had this for quite a while. And I guess that's maybe for me where I'm getting that more like nostalgic romantic aspect of it, is like, because you just don't have a lot of people that are like, I'm gonna do a dipper and it's not gonna be a big juicy bomb. That it's nice.
Yeah, thank you very much. So that's what we're drinking. So yeah, she's 8.4%, so she's fairly spicy. She's fairly spicy, but also, I mean, we don't tend to do a lot of high ABV beers, or we haven't tended to do a lot of high ABV beers for reasons sort of stated previously. You know, we're a session, like our roots in pub drinking mean our core range is quite sessionable, and I'm just quite keen to move towards kind of more in specials and in kind of one-off brews. I'm kind of keen to start exploring things that are just a bit naughtier, a bit funner. Not that our other range isn't fun. I'm pleased to leave that. But, you know what I mean? Like this kind of like luxury, the luxury of a higher ABV. There's just something like the richness on your tongue of the alcohol. I just don't think it's something you can fake. And like we see it a lot with the low alcohol beers that are coming into the market. There's some fantastic tasting beers there. But it's just when you have it in the mouth, there's this viscosity to, I don't know, kind of when you start going over 5, that it just coats the tongue. It kind of, there's a thrill to it. And it's, we shouldn't be this excited about alcohol. I realize I'm saying this, but it adds this like element of luxury, and it's sort of like so hopefully intentional, and it feels like, especially again, we talked earlier about how expensive beer is, because it just has to be. That's how expensive it is to make and sell, and that's what beer costs. But if you're going to spend 7 or 8 quid on a pint, make it a good pint. You know what I mean? Make it a proper pint. Maybe have one really great pint rather than 4 lesser pints. So I feel I feel excited. I feel a little bit drawn towards some higher ABV beers. I think I'm definitely going to be bringing some more out as we go through the year.
It's interesting that you said about sort of the luxury element with that alcohol. You're like, I realised that we're kind of talking about that. But I was actually having a conversation with somebody at the weekend, interestingly enough, because it's a friend of ours, and he came round and he was saying like, so alcohol-free beer, and you know, I had a question that someone asked me about alcohol-free spirits, and like, you know, is it made the same, like beer obviously I'm assuming is made sort of in a similar way when it's alcohol free, but I'm not sure about spirits. So I was kind of like explaining what I knew, very base level, about alcohol free beer, and kind of explaining why certain tastes were as they were because of how it's made there. And I was like, yeah, I don't really know about like spirits. And I was like, because I know that like alcohol free gin, for example, it's just a bunch of like botanicals, but I was like, I don't really know how you'd go about making that, because like we were talking about alcohol-free whiskey, and you were saying, you know, somebody offered to get me some alcohol-free whiskey for my birthday, and we were like, but what would that taste like? Because we were like, part of the taste of it is that alcohol burn, right? Is that alcohol burn. So we're like, and it just came to my mind, because it was like, yeah, that's part of like that premium part of that taste is that like alcohol element to it. And we were like, what happens when you sort of remove that in spirits? And we're like, oh, that's a bit. And then we started tangenting to be like, yeah, I'm guessing you can do an alcohol-free vodka, because then it just wouldn't, like, what would it be?
Have either of you had like an alcohol-free spirit? I mean, you said your friends were going to bring you some.
No. So I've had alcohol-free gin, but he started trying to add more like alcohol-free into his routine, and so he was just basically saying that like a friend of his was saying, oh yeah, I'll get this alcohol-free whiskey, and then that prompted a conversation about like, how do we make alcohol-free spirits? And I was like, I don't know anything about that. And I was like, but I'm very intrigued. I was like, because this is how the beer's made. And I was like, and I can understand how you'd maybe do that with wine and Prosecco. And I was like, but spirits. I was like, I went to the Bombay Sapphire gin distillery, and watching how they make it, I'm like, I don't know how you make that alcohol free. And like part of that is just the alcohol taste and some of the spirits. I'm like, I don't know how you would.
It's got a flavour, hasn't it? And it's I mean, obviously it's got a flavour. We all know it, and we kind of recognise it often as like as a mark of a good brewer, a bad brewer. Like, does it taste like alcohol? It shouldn't do. But it adds something. It's like this kind. It's like you like mentioned earlier, peppering, like a seasoning. It's like it's like this kind of fifth flavour that we don't talk about, fifth ingredient that we don't talk about. And it's kind of interesting when you. So I saw Neon Raptor brought out a 0.5er, and he did like a really great post on Instagram, and he described it as using a lazy yeast, which I love. And you know, the brushes that I've had with brewing 0.5 beers so far have been using the lazy yeast. And it's interesting to me because I'm like, it's got a super high finishing gravity. So you would associate that with body, but then often there's this thinness to them, and it's not that it's thin, it's the alcohol's missing. It's that syrupy alcohol. So I mean, how you replicate that in spirits, I'm sure it's probably like reverse osmosis or pasteurization or something like that they do. But I shouldn't imagine that using lazy yeast is part of the plan for Gordon's, but
no, but it was just such an interesting conversation because I was like, well, I can tell you about what I know about the beer part of it, and I was like, for the spirits one, I don't know. So it just, that is a complete tangent, but it was just when you were talking about the higher ABV, and you're like, oh yeah, the element of that alcohol in it, and tasting that alcohol in it, and it having that sort of like premium sort of like feel to it. It just made me immediately think of that conversation because we were like, whiskey, that's like such, you think of whiskey as such like a premium product, and like part of that is the alcohol taste to it. And I was like, I think you could probably get similar flavors and then smoke it, but it would be missing that key element of that alcohol taste to it. So I was like, I don't know how that would work.
I wonder too as well how it would affect the price. So with beer, making lower ABV beer, you're using the same amount of ingredients more or less, particularly the expensive ingredients like yeast, much more expensive to use the lazy yeast than normal yeast, and hops, obviously. Sometimes more because you're using cryo hops or you're using liquid hops because they work better in the alcohol freeze. But then on top of that, you're using preservatives. If you can, you're going to be at least sterile filtering it, if not sending it away for pasteurization. And you should be doing at least one of those things. And so the processing on it, what you're saving in, say, duty, and you are, because there's no duty on it, the costs of production are much higher. So people look at it and go, I don't understand why it costs the same, but that's why it's the same. But with something like whiskey, I'm wondering, the duty would be so much higher. I'm wondering if you would actually see a price reduction on that. Because I mean, beer duty can be spenny, but it's, you know,
I feel like I'm intrigued. This has made me more intrigued. So initially I was like, this is really interesting. But I feel like now this conversation's made me even more intrigued. And I'm like, now I want to go away and research. Like before I was like, that's interesting. I could look that up maybe. And then I sort of didn't think about it. And now the way I'm like, yeah, no, that is really an interesting.
I'm kind of intrigued to just try some. Like, I'd like to start this conversation by just trying some. Like maybe some alcohol-free whiskey would be a fun. Would it be fun? I don't know.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, I kind of want to try it. So it's like, yeah, well, there we go. But what I will say, before I tangented, I was going to say that what I really love about all sort of like the hand beers as well, minus the label, we can talk again when we get into the International Women's Day brew day stuff. We can talk about it, but the labels are always great. But I also really love that you always put like what hops are used on it as well. Like I really like that, because going back to what you were saying about how Citra used to be like the main sort of like the main thing that people were using however long ago. For when we started doing our end of quarter reviews, I've changed from using Untapped to using a spreadsheet. I still put stuff on Untapped, but I don't rate stuff on Untapped. I just check it in on there. And then I've started putting stuff on a spreadsheet, but I get anyone that's listened to us probably knows before this point knows that I've got really nerdy with my quarterly stuff. So I've been trying to list out like hops and yeast and malts wherever I can find it. And it's really good that you got on there, because I want to know, connection-wise, have we seen a drop in people using stuff like, you know, hops like Citra? Like, are we seeing that people are using more of a particular hop variety? So do you find, like, from your perspective, that have you seen like a change in the type of hops that you are utilizing now? Do you see like a particular trend of certain hops that are being used at the moment?
I mean, it's tricky to say because obviously our core, Shaka,
which
which
is
is
delightful.
that's our original house pale. That's Citra, Cascade, and Chinook. Always has been, always will be. Predominantly Citra. And then it's the same hop blend on Toad Liquor, the beer that we brewed with famous artist David Shrigley. So 2 of our biggest selling products use Citra as their predominant hop. So the way we buy hops and use hops is obviously going to be dictated by like our biggest sellers. But when I'm coming to brew specials, again, it will kind of depend what I'm brewing. Like I've just brewed a mild with Round Corner. So that wasn't really a kind of a trendy American hop journey anyway. But I'm talking, I'm writing a recipe at the moment with Hackney Church, who are coming down in the summer. And the hops that I feel like the hops that people are mentioning that they want to brew with, some of them I'm like, who? Just gonna look that up. Sure, that sounds nice. So yeah,
Just drop me an email, girl.
will do. But yeah, so it feels like there's a lot of room for some of the new players, and I think brewers will always be interested and curious about new hops on the scene. I think hop suppliers have been really creative about pushing, like when they know they've got a good product, they've been really creative. Like Bart Haas everyone's been really good with Crush this, last 6 months. It's been like the hop that everyone's been talking about. And then I guess this time last year was Strata, which is a gorgeous hop as well. And you still see Strata being used in abundance, which is wonderful, rather than having fallen off a cliff like maybe we saw with sort of Sabro.
Or Talus.
Talus.
Talus is almost as
I mean,
weird.
look, I don't dislike Sabro. I'm not here hating on Sabro. I like Sabro. I like the flavors, but I do agree that I think there was like Talus came out and it was like Talus is this new amazing thing, launched it. It was great, and then it was like you saw maybe like 6 months worth of Talus beers, and then like now you might go, oh, it tastes kind of like Sabro, but maybe different. I think it could be Talus, maybe. But then, like, you don't really see it that much, so completely get what you're saying.
They definitely had their minute. They had their minute in the limelight. I mean, I always sort of say I'm not a fan, but actually, we made 2 beers with Sabro, and I liked both of them. I literally did this with Sabro. It was like,
you're like,
Sabro Bay.
See, I'd be like, dump it all in, and you're like, I wonder if it's partially seasonal though, because I think some of these certain flavors, maybe some people think are particular, like it works really well in a particular season over another season, whereas some hops are just timeless. They're seasonless, timeless.
I mean, I think to a certain extent, I mean, there's the growers who are making all their interesting little bits and bobs and their HBC this is and their HBC that. And then you've got the merchants who are like, I think we're on something with this one. Let's make it a thing. And then generally speaking, they'll be quite creative about kind of partnering up with like the best breweries they can find, the ones that everyone else looks to and goes, here, we'll give you a whole crap ton of this beer, of this. I'm assuming this is how it works. Here, use some of this, make a really nice beer. And then everyone will be like, I want to make a beer like them. And
sometimes, yeah.
I worked in fashion before I worked in hops, and it's a bit like that. It's sort of like
influencer marketing works across the board.
We didn't call it influencers when I was young and I was working in the fashion industry. But we did use those techniques. We would gift clothes to celebrities, or we would you get them in magazines through good old PR, and it's the way trends built. So it's sort of like there's an element of everyone's sort of looking around them and seeing what other people are doing. Everyone's looking to the kids at the front of the pack a little bit, And I think so yeah, there are some that just have like this like lasting, some of them will just stick, Simcoe, Amarillo, Mosaic.
It's versatility, I imagine, as
Idaho
well.
7, that's really gone the distance, and that's a stunner.
Yeah. Big
and
fan.
I think there's a few that just stick around, and I think it's just a case of just throwing everything at the wall, and sometimes it's around for a season and sometimes it's around for good.
Putting my work hat on again, we are also looking at yields and resilience in these hops that a bit, because we have, climate change is a real thing.
I had to break it to someone about SARS, and I was like, normally my co-host would talk to you about this, but I will talk to you about this today.
SARS is not doing well, guys. Like, I think it's come back a little bit, but some of the older hops are not doing well because of the way the planet is. So there is some elements of balancing out these amazing flavors and aromas, but also can it withstand the climate? Is it producing enough? Is it producing enough yield for what people want? Like, if that ends up in everyone's core range, can we produce that yield over and over and over again consistently, even if there's a bad harvest? Is it resistant to pests? Is it resistant to pollution? Like, there's all different factors that are going into these things now, as well as those flavour and aroma profiles. So, we're looking at all the different factors.
Yeah. I think as well, it feels like the number of new breweries is slowing down a little bit now anyway, because, who would open a brewery? They'd have to be nuts. The economics of it are absolutely mental.
So true.
But so I think there's an element of that slowing down a little bit. And I also think that more and more I'm seeing breweries on the market that don't have a core range at all. Like Barron's a really good example. People like breweries who are just putting out fantastic beer, batch after batch, and then when it's gone, it's something else. And so that will impact, like Joe was saying, the fear is if you launch a hop and you do a really good job marketing it and you suddenly got a load of breweries. Like, do you remember when Mariana Trench by Weird Beer, they had to change the recipe because they couldn't get Citra?
Yeah.
And it was a long time ago. I'm sorry, showing my age. But yeah, sort of like, I wonder if the kind of the era of, like, I think the people that have a core range now. And I think that the kind of the newer guard of brewers maybe aren't so much interested in introducing a core range. And therefore you might see a more fluid kind of hop market and fluid trend, and also a little bit more availability of things, particularly of the newer hops. But yeah, I don't know. If I knew, I'd be rich. But yeah, it's definitely a trend led. It's definitely trend led. And I think it's tricky because you kind of want to walk that line between feeling what's interesting and being in touch with like what's happening in the industry, but also you don't want to be a follower, you don't want to be a sheep. I want to make beers that I would drink, that I'm excited to make. I really get excited about shining a light on sort of lesser known hops or kind of older hops, or kind of like reinventing, like we were talking about the Chinook in this beer, kind of finding a place for a hop that maybe is known as a particular thing and doing it in a different way. So I think it's really wonderful to have the opportunity to kind of brew with new innovative crossbreeds and products on the market. But I'm really conscious that I kind of want to march to the beat of my own drum. Does that sound really...
No, that 100%. Absolutely makes sense. No, I think that 100% makes sense, because I think it can be challenging, because it's not just that I don't think that I'd view it as following like that sheep mentality of you're just following someone for the sake of it. I think it's the being open to being like, somebody made this amazing beer that I had it. how they executed it was great. It's actually inspired me to take that and go, what can I do with that? And then go, okay, well, let me see what I can do with that. And then other people kind of go, well, a few people have done that. What am I sleeping on? Let me have some of that. Okay, well, what can I do with that? And so I think it sounds like, as a non-brewer, it sounds like it's probably that delicate balance of kind of being like, you know, I want to be open to what other people are doing to a degree, but not just brewing with something for the sake of brewing with it, not just brewing with crush because you go, people are talking about crush, let me have that. You're like, well, hang on a minute, let's talk about this. I'm interested in this, I'm curious about this, you know, let's talk about it more. Okay, what can I do with that? It's not just a blindly, well, everyone else is doing it, so yeah, sure, put in an order for me and I'll make something work with it. It's that balance. And I think that's what makes some stuff really interesting as well, especially when you see people that kind of take a hop and kind of go, I can't even think of any examples at the moment, but when someone takes a hop and does something that's like completely out of left field with what you'd normally do with that hop, that is what I think is like sometimes really interesting. But I feel like with this, me looking and drilling down on this level quarterly, I'm seeing trends where I'm going like, oh, I went from having no beers that had this hop to like all of a sudden the last 4 I had that particular hop in it. That's really interesting. Like you said, crush, I was like, I've seen crush a few times now, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. But then I do see that there's still like citrus still going strong. It's not like, you know, the good old sea hops, they're not going to be knocked.
Yeah. They're so good. Yeah, they're so good. But yeah, I think it's important. Yeah, have a bit of both. It's good to have that eye on the old stalwarts, but there's just so many exciting things coming through. And like Joe was saying, there's like a lot of them are being bred with this kind of element of future proofing in mind, which is really something we can't ignore.
Yeah.
As like I was going to say as brewers, but actually
as human beings.
As human beings, we can't ignore what's happening with climate change and the way it's affecting crops and harvests. I mean, like even as a complete aside, we do an foraged elderflower saison every year. And every year we came up with this idea about 4 years ago because we wanted to do an elderflower saison, and the brew team was like, there was 3 of us. And we were like, okay, the elderflowers have to be picked on the day that we use them. So we need 1 person making the beer and 2 people picking the elderflowers. And we're like, 2 people couldn't possibly pick the amount of elderflowers we need to make an impact on the beer. What do we do? And I'd been chatting to a guy who drinks in the pub a lot, who's a forager. And so we came up with this idea, like, let's get all the locals from the pub involved. And so we had everyone gather in the morning. We all had coffees and croissants, and the brewers went upstairs to start brewing. And all of our mates and locals and regulars went down to the park and started foraging for elderflower. And then they came back to the pub and spent the whole afternoon taking the flowers off the stalks and putting them in tights so that we could drop them in for the end of the boil. It was so cool, and we do it every year, and I love that beer. It's such a wonderful day. But what's really interesting is that every year the date has been pushed back, and it's gone back by, like, I think our original beer, we brewed it kind of around now, and we launched it at the beginning of June. And our brew day, I work now with a local elderflower farm. And so I kind of normally email them about kind of early April going, what's going on? What do you know? What do you know? When should I program my brew? And we also still forage, but I buy a few from her, just thanks for the intel. And we're brewing it on the 29th of May. It's gone back a month. It's basically gone back a week every year for the last 4 years. And that's climate change.
Yep.
It's climate change. There's nothing else. So the fact that hop growers are really bearing that in mind is essential to the future of our industry and the beers that we want to be making. And I think whilst it's cool to be following, you know, oh, this is really pineapple-y, or this tastes really great, or this like really hype hop tastes like umbungo, and that's brilliant. I think, you know, we should all have an eye on, you know, the ones that are sustainable and which are going to last. Because it's just we can't be hitching our wagons to.
Yeah. And it's not just like the really old hops, like the proper like landrace noble first ones. Like we were out in Yakima last year. We usually go middle of September, and they're already harvesting everything. And we went to the farm that first grew Eldorado, and they were like, "Come on, we're going to drive down the road. We're going to go to this field. This field of Eldorado will probably be ready to be picked like next week." And we go in, and the two, like, so there's the current owner and then his daughter, and his daughter's going to be like 5th generation. She'll take over the farm eventually. And they're stood in the field, and he just grabbed one of the cones and went, "Oh." And then like they like listen to it and they feel it, and he's like, "This isn't." He's like, "This is not being picked next week." And then him and his daughter are having like a little discussion, and they were like, "We can't pick this next week. It's not going to be ready. Like this probably won't be picked for like another 2 to 3 weeks because it's not ready." And like, I mean, they know because they've been doing it for so long, but they were like, "This is not where we expected this field to be at this point." And like, you know, they were there the week before and they were like, "Yep, be ready the next week." And they're like, "Oh no, this has not progressed just in that week the amount that they thought it would." So it's, you know, it's happening to all of the varieties, just some are better at it than others are.
It's wild though, isn't it? Because then the knock-on impact is, especially when you have certain breweries that will make like a green hop or a wet hop, that's, I guess, you know, Kate, you can probably speak more to that, but in the sense of like when you're doing your brewing schedule and you're like, yeah, okay, normally we would do our like green hop beer or wet hop beer around this time, and then you're like, you get the call that's like, yeah, it's not going to be ready. You're like, okay, hold fire. Like that must be just incredibly stressful.
Even then, just getting your regular amount of hops in. Like if you've contracted this crop year at this time, once it's picked, it's then got to be kilned. It's got to be processed in whatever way we're processing it. If it's, you know, most of the hops that we use are not from the UK, so they've got to come in from somewhere and then sent back out to you. Like that just has a knock-on effect of when they actually arrive here. So when you can actually, as a brewer, have them in your hand to brew with them, like it changes everything.
I know that feels like a massive tangent, but I feel like I hope people listen to that. No, but I feel like I hope people listen to that and that gives them a new appreciation. Like as much as we probably go, oh, we tangented there, but I feel like I hope people come away from this going like, actually, I've got a different view and a more of an appreciation, especially hearing like a brewer talk about it and someone that works in hops talk about it, being like, oh shit, I'm drinking this beer, and actually what did it take to get it from that hop farm to my glass right now to enjoy?
So just do what we do when a special doesn't turn out as we planned, and just change the marketing.
Yeah,
we call it a sour. It's fine.
It's fine. That's fine. No one has ever done that ever.
Talking about hops and the environment.
Yeah.
I was gonna feel like I feel like a lot of times I'll see like something will be like, oh, funky, like
if it's sour.
No, I feel like somebody will be like, oh yeah, it's a funky, more funky saison blend, and then you're like, oh yeah, because that saves everything. That flavor profile saves everything.
Right,
farmhouse saves everything.
Whenever you see a sour stout, you're like, was that supposed to be sour when you started?
I know that obviously we're already projecting like we're going to go over, so because I really want to talk about the International Women's Day stuff, but no, I mean, I don't care for me and Joe because we do this normally. I care for you.
No. I ate my dinner before I came on.
Perfect.
And cool. I've left a note on the front door so that when my husband comes in, he just comes in really quietly. And apart from the fact that I've got a delivery coming at some point.
It's not happened yet, and we've already got through the emotional stuff, so that's okay. I was just going to say, like, if we're okay with going a bit over, I kind of wanted to take a step back because you mentioned about having been in fashion, and I don't think we ever actually asked you this question the last time we were on, because I think we blitzed through to get through the Brave Noise stuff and really focus on Brave Noise. But could you talk about like what your journey was from just like a beer lover into like when did you first know that you really enjoyed beer, and then like what was that getting into actually brewing?
It was like a really, I think it's probably quite an unusual journey. I feel there's a lot of people. I've been very, very lucky. So I wasn't a huge beer drinker for most of my adult life. I studied fashion and worked in fashion for 4 or 5 years. And then and then moved to Australia. My father died really suddenly, and he'd worked in publishing. I had this real idea. I don't want to do fashion anymore. It feels like I'm not contributing anything to society. I want to do something that feels more, I don't know, cerebral probably, and more meaning. And so I tried to get jobs in publishing in London and failed, using complete nepotism. Like, do you remember my dad? He gave you your first job. You're now the man. Didn't happen. Anyway, I moved to Australia on a bit of a whim, kind of like that, working holiday thing. And literally signed up to a temping agent, and they sent me to a job at Random House the next day. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
No way.
I was like, oh, really? It's this simple? And so I turned up to do a maternity cover job at Random House and just wormed my way in. And so I worked with Random House in Australia for 6 months, and then moved across to Allen and Unwin, which is it's actually originally from the UK, but it's the biggest independent publisher in Australia. And they at the time were publishing imprints like Bloomsbury, Faber Faber, Serpent's Tail, some like all of the really interesting kind of literary, kind of edgy stuff. And it was a fantastic place to work, and I worked in their publicity department. So when books came out, I'd get to like tour with the authors all over the country and take them to the TV and book festivals and stuff. And it was really, really good fun. And I always had this little dream. I wanted to move to Paris. And I just really, my dad literally just quit my job. I just quit my job and moved to Paris. And
I'm still dying at the fact that you were like, I really tried to be like, hey, can I get it? And then you were like, I just joined a temp agency. They're like, Random House. And you're like, I guess I will, if I must.
So I got my dream. I got to work in publishing for 4 or 5 years, lived in Australia. It was fantastic. Loved it. Moved to Paris to work for Shakespeare and Company, which is this very wonderful kind of storied bookshop on the left bank. Which has a wonderful story. If you're interested in bookshops and things like that, look up Shakespeare and Company. It's a wonderful story. There's a really good book called Books, Begets, and Bookshops and Begets, or something. Bedbugs or something. Bedbugs, Books and Bookshops or something, which is the story of someone that worked there and lived there. But it's a fantastic place. I wanted to go and work there. Got to Paris, obviously, after my very ill thought out plan to just like quit my job and turn up. And didn't get a job there because there weren't any jobs there. And my long lost cousin, Tori, who I hadn't seen for years, got in touch because obviously our mums had been talking, and she was like, "Are you living in Paris?" And I was like, "I am." She's like, "Why haven't you been in touch?" I was like, I just didn't really want to be your problem. And anyways, she's a wonderful person, and she's now one of my very dear friends. And she took me in. And literally like picked me up like a little stray cat and just dragged me home. It took me in, and she and her partner Paul ran a English brew pub chain called the Frog Pubs. And so they were based on a little bit like the Fresh and Firkin model, or kind of Brewhouse Kitchen. They were kind of English style pubs in central Paris that had their own little microbrewery on site, and they made their own range of beers that were largely influenced by English style of beers. So they had stouts, ESBs, they had swan necks pulling beer through. They had like different cooling lines that were set up for the different types of beers. They'd all be served at exactly the right temperature.
Wow.
So I think the stout was coming out at 8 degrees, and the bitter and the ASB were coming out at 10. And they had like different length cooling lines, so they would all come to the bar at the right temperature. They really thought it through. It was wonderful. And so yeah, they were like, come and just work in the pubs. You need a job. And part of that was learning about beer, because they're making their own beer. And it was sort of like a little mini Cicerone, kind of a bit like, the first level Cicerone. You had to go off and do like a half day with the head brewer, and you'd visit the brewery and you'd touch all the ingredients and you'd talk about how beer tastes like beer. And I really didn't like beer, and I just had such a wonderful day. I just was like, this is so cool. Like, it's like mad science and flavor, and I loved cooking, and I was kind of, I guess, probably a bit creative, and I love a good story. And the way it came together with this like magic and science and nature and creativity and maths and all of these things and art and kind of a little bit of just art, like having a sense for it. I just was absolutely bewitched by it. And I kind of found that I had a palate too, and that really helps. I think when you find that you're quite good at something without trying very hard, you instantly go, well, let's have a go at that. And so I found I had a palate quite early and could really differentiate like flavors and aromas and find the words to describe them. And because I had the marketing background, Tori and Paul at Frog Pubs, they kind of brought me into their marketing department. And I kind of sort of developed a job for myself that was really kind of managing the beer side of things and kind of really relaunching their brewing as a kind of craft beer, because it was like 2012. So it's when craft beer was really starting to kick off. So kind of remarketing it as this kind of like, this is a standalone beer brand, which was really good fun. I got trained up on their big kit to be a brewer. I was like home brewing and hanging out with all the kind of craft brewers in Paris at the time, and like it's a lot of American expats in France, so a lot of really good brewing happening. And so yeah, I kind of spent 7 or 8 years in France, like learning to brew, learning about beer from American expats and French people who it was quite an interesting scene. It was very creative. And I think that kind of like culinary element, it sounds like a cliche, it really fed into the kind of the craft beer scene, which was also, it was just very explorative at the time anyway. It was before COVID. It was before everyone was so worried about money, and everyone was just sort of on this massive flavor journey. They were exploring and adventuring, and they just wanted, like, you'd go into a beer bar and you'd want to try everything, the weirdest thing. What have you got? What have you got? There was none of this, I like this, what have you got that's like that? It would be like, what do you recommend? What's new? What's weird? And there'd be like seaweed saisons, and there was someone we knew who lived out in the country that did like a cassoulet beer.
Oh,
like they fat washed cassoulet or something like that. Like they fat washed something with cassoulet to get the flavor across without the fat.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a good beer, but it was so creative. Do you know what I mean?
We love the beer.
That was an 10%. Like the fact that you were like, it wasn't good, but it was interesting. Like I would go in a place and be like, that's the, like, what is the most interesting thing? Like,
I would drink it.
When
I went to Prague,
did you do this?
when I went to Prague a few weekends ago, like we'd go in someplace like, what do you want? I'm like, what do you like? Go with the flight, and you know, the flight was like the server picks it out for you, and it's like, yeah, that's cool. It's like, you know, well, what tasting notes do you want? And I was like, the weirder the better. I was like, give me the weirdest stuff you have, because I want weird stuff that I can't just go and get anywhere else. To me, that's exciting. So I completely understand going in and being like, that sounds like it's probably maybe not gonna, I'm gonna go for it. I want that. Exactly that. So it was kind of a cool place to be learning about beer, because I had, like, on one side you had all the Americans who knew how to make beer, and there was dry hopping, and every so often someone come back from holiday with like a bottle of Pliny or something, and it would be like, ooh, and we'd gather around for bottle shares, and it was all very fetishistic and a bit weird. And then on the other side you had these kind of like French farmhouse breweries and young craft brewers who looked like young craft brewers everywhere, like men with tattoos and beards, black t-shirts, but they were kind of, they had this kind of rustic French kind of, I don't know, kind of creativity about them that I haven't seen like on this side of the channel. But to be completely fair, I only moved back to the UK in 2019, so maybe I just missed that moment in British brewing. But it was it was a wild time to be floating around Paris and knocking up to all the little kind of craft beer bars and getting a third of this or a demi of that, and just it was good time to learn about flavors and learn about brewing, and it was excellent. So I owe everything to the Frog Pubs, I guess, and Tori for picking me up off the street. And not me anyone's listening to this, not me.
Yeah, if it hadn't been for her, I'd have gone home. I'd have flunked out within a week, run out of money, gone home and gone, well, I'll probably go back to Australia. So
that's amazing.
That is, honestly, I'm so glad I asked that, because I was like, looking at the time, I was like, I really want to know this, because I don't think we've asked you this before. And then I was like, but I'm not sure. And I'm actually glad that I did, because I was like, that's really so interesting.
The answer is I'm a massive faker.
No, not at all.
I land on my feet everywhere.
Not at all. I think that's what makes it so interesting, is the fact that you were like, yeah, I went into London, it's like, can do things. I went to Australia and they're like random house. And then you were like, yeah, no, okay, we'll just go to Paris now. Like the following your passion. But I think for me, that's like that following your passion. It's what's got you to where you are now. And like, can you imagine if you were like, yeah, I don't know, like I couldn't get into publishing, so I guess I'll just do something else. And then you didn't follow that path. I just find that for me, those type of stories is like incredibly interesting. So I find like that is so cool, so interesting. So
thank you. It's I got real lucky, but I also I don't know, I'm a great believer in, I like a good story. So honestly, I'd rather just like chuck everything at the wall and see if it sticks. And even if it doesn't, how funny it would be describing to everyone how it all came pouring down. Like at least try and fail. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I've been quite lucky, and I moved back here in 2019, and again super lucky. Moved to Brighton on a whim. Again, there's a bit of a recurring theme.
Love it.
Partner, and we were renting an apartment from a lady that we found on Facebook, and I mentioned I was a brewer, and she's like, my friend runs a pub that has a brewery just around the corner, and they're upsizing at the moment, and it was the Hand in Hand. And so, I've been there a week, and my landlady took me down to meet Jen, who owns the Hand in Hand and the Hand Brew Co. And it was a Friday afternoon, and we drank much Prosecco. And I think everyone else left, and just the two of us sat in the bar drinking Prosecco. It's not even my favourite drink, but she fast became my favourite person. And then, and I got engaged in that pub. I got married in that pub. And then COVID happened, and I just helped out. I was working for loads of different breweries, doing deliveries here and covering paternity leave there, and helping out on a brew shift when someone needed a pair of hands or a canning shift. And just waiting for, I guess, a job to happen. And I was helping out during COVID with Jen and the pub, and they were about to open the big place in Worthing, and they offered me a job. So again, got really lucky.
That's a very good story, though. Regardless, luck or not, you could say it's luck. It's not luck. Clearly, there was a connection there, and clearly they could sort of like see that. But I think still an amazing story as well. I think that is so cool. I like hearing people's stories, so that's why I was just like, I'm going to ask this question. It is incredibly interesting in that regard.
It's a fun story.
A fun story. I guess quick fire round before we go to International Women's Day. Pubs around the Worthing and Brighton area that you think people should know about if they are looking to travel there in this upcoming lovely weathered season, or whenever.
Oh, you absolutely must. I don't know where the camera is. You must come to the South Coast. It's stunning. It's lovely. I moved here on a whim because I literally had a nice day out. That's how good it is. And that's not even a weird story. If you meet people in Brighton, 99% of the time you say, what made you move here? They go, oh, I came here for a wedding and never left. Or I came here for a weekend and never left. Yeah. It's so common down here. So Brighton and Worthing, really, really good beer town. I think Brighton, because it's sort of better known, it's had historically some problems with like drinking, like problem drinking, people coming down for stag and hen do's, or people coming down from London for a bit of a trashy weekend. And as such, there's been some restrictions on licenses around the city centre. So it's quite hard. It's getting better now, but it's quite hard to find like great independent venues selling craft beer in the city centre, because the cost is so expensive. Like the rent in Brighton is so high, but also just it's impossible to get a license. But that said, around Brighton, obviously Hand in Hand, it's a stunning little place, 200-year-old brewery, like one block back from the sea, down a little alleyway. It's just a gorgeous wookie little thing. It looks like a cartoon, and the beer is fabulous, if I say so myself. But aside from that, I would really recommend the Black Dove, which is just around the corner from us. They do some wonderful beer and really good cocktails, and it's gorgeous. It looks like a pub from your fantasies. It's like all kind of melting candles and dark corners and things. And I would also talk about the Hole in the Wall, which is great, teeny tiny, even smaller than the Hand, if you can imagine it, which most of you probably can because you've not been to the Hand. It's absolutely teeny tiny little pub run by an excellent publican called Jim, who's been floating around Brighton for years making good pubs great with amazing beer lists, and he really knows how to sell it, really knows how to do a beer list. That's absolutely worth a visit. Evening Star by the station, absolute ride or die. Mark, who runs the Evening Star, so Evening Star, fantastic. It's the home of Dark Star. It's where Dark Star first started. They used to have a little brew pub there too. Now you'll get a mixture of really, really good cask. They've normally got about 4 to 6 lines of cask on. Incredible condition, and it flies out, so nothing is sitting around getting stale. And they also will normally have about, I think, 15 different keg lines, and it's really interesting range of like European imports and local craft. And he's also got a lager bar down in the same sort of area of town as the Hole in the Wall, called the Brick. So if you're interested in your interesting side pour, Czech, gorgeous, dark lagers, the kind of not your beaten track lagers, the Brick is a good visit. And I would also recommend the Rook round the corner from the Brick, which is a recent opening with, again, a really, really big beer list and great little kind of beer garden and nice people. Over in Worthing, loads and loads of really independent, great venues. Mirakai Tasting Room. I know that you're good friends of Mirakai. Emma
Friends
and
of the show.
Ollie.
Literally, the best photo my favourite photo that I saw shared from the International Women's Collaboration Brew Day was I was saying hi to Emma and Ollie's dogs. I was looking through photos and somebody had shared it. I was like, oh, I'll save that one for later because I love this one, because it was me on the ground with the dogs, and I was like, oh, hello. And I was like, I'm so glad someone took this.
Sad. Like, I didn't get to because I was doing a hop talk.
I was taking photos for Joe doing the hop talk, and then I saw Emma go, come here. And I was like, what? Babies! And then I was like, I'm sorry, Joe, I've taken you a lot of photos. I've got to go. And I was like, I'm going to go say hi to the dogs. And I got a photo of that, and it was great. So yes, the tasting room.
Tasting room is a wonderful venue. And it feels like... just feels like a very modern craft beer venue. I really like the way they've kind of thought about comfort and atmosphere and ambience. It's not like over the top or anything like that. It's a modern space, and they've kept it modern. But it's just the kind of place you really could actually spend a lovely afternoon.
Yes.
And it's not kind of, all these like fold out temporary chairs and, backless stools and things. It's really... It's well designed. It's really comfortable. They always have a really thoughtful range on. It's normally a bit of a mix of theirs and guest stuff, so that's really, really good. Big love for them. Also, Beer No Evil, Gemma and Gareth, wonderful. It's a kind of a tap room and a off license, and it's right opposite the bus home for me. So what's great is you go and have a little cheeky drink, and you can get something from the fridge for the bus, which normally lasts about the amount of time it takes to drink a very strong, hoppy 6% can, I've discovered.
We all love a good train and bus tinny. I feel like I can speak on behalf of all of us. We all love a good bus and train tinny. It's just the nature of things.
Absolutely. And then we've got a pub in Worthing too, the Toad in the Hole. We don't have a tap room on the brewery. I'm hoping one day we will open one again. We had one briefly. It just didn't make a lot of money. And then when we opened the Toad in the Hole, we kind of had a local tap room. So we've sort of taken a step back on the brewery tap room. So the Toad in the Hole, which is our brew pub right next to Worthing Station. It's lush. Again, similar vibes to the Hand in Hand. Very much about community, very much about the people, very much about what's going on around the pub as much as what's going on in the pub. So there's always kind of interesting creative events happening and stuff going on, and music and art and things, as well as obviously our full range of beer and some guest beers. Around the corner you have Selden Arms, run by Jim, who does Hole in the Wall. So another great pub run by great people selling great beer. There's honestly too many to mention, but I'd probably give a shout out to Anchored as well, which is like a little micro pub. So if you're into your cask, Nigel, I think, is the first micro pub in Sussex.
Need
And
like a little beer crawl situation here as well.
Oh,
There needs to
you
be a map.
absolutely can.
Yeah.
You
Needs to be a
absolutely
little
can.
map.
I actually we had the Worthing Tap
Yeah.
takeover this weekend, and I actually created a little walking map for myself and saved it on my screen as a little icon, so I could just
Please share,
Yeah.
because I would
I was
love to go
so-
and do a little.
I was so sad I
crawl.
couldn't come down for Worthing Tap Takeover this weekend because I was at Generation Craft in Ashford instead.
fun
And they
though.
fell on the same weekend, and I was like, I can't get to Tap Takeover this week. It was so good last year when I went. Old Bike Store and
Bike Store.
Bottle and Jug and the Brooksteed. Also, I'll throw
Thank
them in
you.
as
I wanted to throw those in, but I was like, I'm going on for too
well.
long.
No,
I
was gonna say,
I'm gonna put them
I
all
would
in
also
there.
add there's another new micro pub that's just opened opposite West Worthing train station, so it is officially my closest
Oh,
pub
yeah.
if I'm getting the train home from the brewery's at West Worthing. So it's called the Foresters, and they do a nice little mix of about even Stevens between cask and keg, so about 4 each, and a really, really well curated fridge. And it's just a lush little environment. They're just dead lovely. Like, I think they've got no background at all, and they just like opened a bar and they've just
Yeah.
done it brilliantly first time, which is bothering. But
you're like, I root for you, and I'm also annoyed. How dare you? But also congratulations.
it's gosh, yes, it's really good. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Joe. Yeah, Old Bike Store, Brooksteed, Bottle and Jug. I think Bottle and Jug have just changed owners, and I think it's much more beer focused now as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some really great spots. Like, we're really, really spoiled.
Yeah.
Down the seafront, there's a few places too that are pouring good craft, not exclusively, but we'll always have a tap or two of something fun. So yeah, we're and it's lovely, and we've got the sea. It's a pebble beach, so take your little neoprene shoes. But yeah,
The thing is, I absolutely love Brighton, but then every time you want to kind of go near the water, you're like, it hurts, everything hurts. But then you still do it. You're just like, but I'm still going for it.
I can't do it. I can't do it without the special booties.
Well, I feel like we need to make a map for that. But talking about community, talking about International Women's Collaboration Brew Day. So is this your, have I got it right? Is it the 3rd or 4th year this year that you've done it? Or have I massively over-egged that?
1, 2, 3, it's our 4th year.
I was going to say 4th, and then I was like, I don't know if I got the math wrong, and it might be the 3rd. So I mathed.
Yeah.
So how did that come about? Tell us about the history of you guys doing International Women's Collaboration
It's
Day.
basically, I'm just gobby. So I kind of moved to Brighton in 2019. I didn't know anyone. I come from this really, really kind of close-knit brewing community and beer community in Paris, and I thought Brighton would be the same. And I kind of got here, and quite rightly, there's, it's a clique, it's community. It takes a moment, and and then COVID happened. I just couldn't find my way in, and I was like, I know that there's people out there making beer, and I know there's people out there drinking beer, and I'm sure they'd probably like to meet people too. And I was looking for a Women's Day, like a International Women's Day IWCBD brew around the South Coast to go to, and I couldn't find any. And there was actually a collective of some bartenders who did one, and I was invited along to that, and that was cool. But it wasn't part of IWCD, it was just a Women's Day brew, and that was fine. But I was just a bit like, it was also kind of mostly bartenders, which is great, but I wanted to meet women that were brewing. I wanted to meet people that were making beer in the industry. And so yeah, COVID happened, and I started working at the Hand. And I sort of said very early on, I was like, would it be all right when things open up if I do a Women's Day? And so we nearly did it the first year, and then it closed down again, and then opened up, and then closed down.
Yeah.
And so 2022 was the soonest. And I remember sort of having a meeting with them all in like December and going, all right, so Women's Day, are you sure that's okay? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, okay, cool, I'll start promoting it if that's cool. If you're all sure that that's fine, I'll start, And I think at like my birthday, which is early January, I started sending emails out to people, and I didn't know anyone. So I literally just had a map of the area, and I typed in breweries, and I'd zoom in on all of them, and I'd go through their website and their Instagram. And if I saw a woman mentioned, like, oh, Amanda and Doug opened the brewery together, I'd email like, dear Amanda, would you like to come to my brewery? Or, you'd see, a girl behind a bar at a festival, and I'd email going, oh, I see you were recently at this festival, and I noticed there was a lady behind the bar. Would they like to come to my Women's Day? And I did this for every brewery I could find. And I got a surprising amount of responses. And I think the first brew day that we had was 80 women, and it was all women that worked in the industry. It was all women that
at the tiny pub.
No, God, no. It was but I remember turning around.
So much work.
I mean, that was a lot of work anyways, but I was like, the fact that you went and you put the time and effort and care into emailing all these people, and then that's before I was just like, oh, wait, hang on a minute, was that at the tiny pub? Because that's even more like...
you were doing the goddess's work here, girl. Like, I love it.
It was just hard. It was like, and I think it was just that thing of like, I can put an Instagram post out, I can do a Facebook post, but who knows who sees it and who knows who responds to it. So we did all of that as well. But I really did. I got them to put it in the trade newsletter as a thing at the bottom, and I think we put it in our link tree. But it was just actually taking the time to go through. I'd literally just scroll through people's Instagram and be like, brilliant.
There's one.
And Burning Sky had done a Brewer's Journal interview on the front page, and there was two women, and I was like, so I emailed going, hello, would Claudia like to come? And it was that simple. Literally, it took a really long time, but it was, I think, a really genuine approach as well. And so we got a lot of people along, which was great. I told Jack, who was the founding brewer at the brewery, that I was expecting maybe 20 people. And then, like, as it got closer and we'd have like weekly meetings, it's like, oh, the numbers are going up slightly. It might be 40, and then by the time of the event it was like 80, and I didn't sleep that night. I was beforehand, I was just so stressed out. And I remember we were going to give the money to Strut Safe, and I couldn't sleep, and I like basically got up about 3 a.m. and I sat there typing signs to put around the brewery, like don't park here and toilets here and stuff. Because I was like, oh, I've got to do this and I've got to do that. I was like, just get up and do it. Lying in bed isn't going to. And I just was like, I looked at my phone and I looked at the train. And I was like, there's a train in a minute. I'm just going to go early. And so I got a train at like 5 a.m. over to Worthing. So I was walking through Brighton at 4 a.m, and no one knew I was out. And my husband was asleep. And I just got up and got dressed and went. And and it's kind of that spooky time when the only people are really creepy people. And I was like, wouldn't it be ironic if I was raped and murdered on the way to my
Oh my God, Kate!
Thankfully I wasn't.
But that's the thing that, to be fair, at that time, like that is the type of thing that goes through your head. Like, of all the things that would happen right now. Yeah.
Welcome to the brain of a woman.
Really and I just got there really early, had loads of time to set up. So by the time everyone else rocked up to help, I'd like laid out the tap room, I put flowers out, I cleaned the brewery, I kind of cleaned the tank, I'd done everything, I'd done the heat X, loaded the grist cases, done everything. I was like literally just standing there like, I've had too much coffee. But it was really, really good. And
seriously,
that first one was
can't even imagine. Was there any fear in you that you were like, okay, I think 80 people are gonna, they've said they're gonna come? Was there anything in you that you were like, is 80 people gonna come? Are less than 80 people? Are more than 80 people gonna come? Like, was there anything about like how many people you were expecting versus how many people you thought would actually turn up, and then it turned out there was gonna be 80 and you were like, shit?
Yeah, a little bit. It's things like organising food. So Jack's got a pizza oven, and that's what he likes. He's a dad. He's got his pizza oven. He likes to make his pizzas, and
pizza oven is great. We loved it.
It's so good.
It's so good.
And like it's also very kind because his birthday is Women's Day. So every year for Women's Day, he comes in on his birthday and makes pizza for like 100 random ladies, and then goes home. And can I also just specify that when I talk about Women's Day, our Women's Day is open to all women, and I'm not specifying it, and I maybe should. Our Women's Day is open to all women.
Yep.
Okay.
We had this conversation.
We had this. I was going to say we had this conversation last week.
Let's do it again, just in case. Like, in case you missed it, last episode,
we were recording. We were recording on a particularly sensitive day.
You are a woman. Trans women are women. If you're not down with that, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah. It's open to all women.
Yep.
trans women, non-binary people, and not because I want to lump people together, but I just want people to feel that they've got a place that they can come.
100%.
And so, yeah, I just need to, so when I talk about it, so I don't have to say it every time, I'm talking about women.
Absolutely understood, because like I said, we were recording on a very sensitive day the last time, and we went off on one, like we were like, because we ranted for about an hour before recording, then we started recording, and Joe was like, should we just throw this in there? I was like, yeah, I'll let you throw it in there. You go, because I'm already ranted out. And then we started recording, and it was like, okay. So we are same page. Don't even worry about it. And if someone listened to that, feminism. If somebody listened to that and they're still here, I think they
were good. I think we're good.
I mean, if someone's listened to like an hour and 20 minutes of us like ranting on about how delicious alcohol is, and
right. I think they're all in the right place.
They're in the right place for sure. But yeah, no, what an absolute. Was there any moment of like when you said there's actually going to be 80 people? Do you think?
Yeah.
He shit his pants about being like, what do you mean it was going to be 20?
He was originally planning to make the dough himself, and then the week before, when I was like, this is what I've got as my my RSVPs, and I was so disorganized first because I was honestly expecting 20 people, so I didn't even have like an Eventbrite or anything set up. It was literally email me if you want to come. So I was like running a spreadsheet alongside it.
God. And
it would like literally I'd just get and because it was bartenders and things like that, so people operate different time frames. I was just getting emails at like 2 a.m. on a Saturday night from like someone going, hey, me and 7 friends want to come, can we put our names down? I'd be God. Remember to do that on Monday. And it was just, so I wasn't even sure of my numbers, and it was chaos. And I was like, I think it's going to be about 80 people. And he just went to the local bakery and was like, can you please make me an absolute crap ton of dough?
Genuinely. It is also really good dough too. Pizza dough's really good.
Well, I was going to say, was that the same person that made the pizza dough for this past one then? Was that who
he I think after that first year, he just goes to them every year. He just says, what are your numbers? I'll order it in.
Amazing.
What a hero. The fact though that he didn't go like, actually that's too many people, and he was like, I'll figure it out, don't worry about it. That is
it took about 3 hours to get everyone fed, but we got everyone fed. And I did sort of have to say to people like that were on team at the beginning, I was like, can you all hold back till the end, because I just don't know how many people are going to be here, and I just want to make sure that everyone as a guest gets fed. And if you don't get fed, I'll call a pizza, I'll order Pizza Express, but can you just make sure that our guests get fed before the team? So I don't think I even ate that day, and I couldn't have eaten anyway. I was too excited. I never eat. Normally someone gives me pizza, I have like a slice of it, and then.
All right, note for us. If we go again next year, we'll make sure that Kate eats.
No, it's fine.
I was going to say, so I had seen it, posted for the last like 2. So for me, I'd noticed the last like 2 years of it before this year. And the first year I was like, that would be really, really cool. But and then because it's for me, it's about hour and a half, 2 hour drive, but that was fine. And then it was sort of like last year when you were doing the burlesque class as well. I was like, burlesque is my jam. I would love to do that. And I really wanted to go, but then we had something that was happening really locally. So I was like, going to go to the local one. I ended up posting. I ended up posting a panel there, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to go there. That's fine. So that's cool. And I was like, next year though, maybe next year. And then because nothing was happening, sort of like this year, I was like, ooh, okay, let me have a look, because this year might be the year. Like I didn't hear anything when I started looking early. I was like, I don't hear anything happening locally. Let me just maybe it could be this year that I go to Hand.
I think we'd talked about going to Hand before I even talked to Kate about in a work capacity. I think we'd already kind of floated the idea that we were like, I was like,
I said, where are you going?
Do Hand, and I was like, oh, I might do Hand again. And then it was Joe Neal at Malt Miller that put us both in touch, because Malt Miller always does their
so many Joes involved. There's so many Joes involved.
Interestingly, I'm a Joanne and she's a Joanna. and we won't answer to the either. Like, we'll both answer to Jo, but I will only answer to Joanna, and she will only answer to Joanna. So,
Can you imagine how I felt in a copy of emails to both of us?
Hey, Jo.
Thanks, Jo. Hi, Jo. Yeah, it was and Kate.
I was going to say,
which Jo am I talking?
when we do the run through of what the actual International Women's Collaboration Brew Day was, there was at least 3, if not 4 Joes. I think there was at least 3
Joes. Jo Goddard did the wassailing to the yeast. We had you doing I
talked about hops.
Oh yeah, Malt Miller Jo.
Malt Miller Jo was brewing over there. Like,
there must have been another Jo. There must have been.
I think there was, yeah. But so let's talk about this, because it's not just a brew day, is it? Like, you put on such a good show. Like, so the brew is happening, but then there's also a bunch of other stuff happening at the same time.
Walk through the day. Walk through this last year, because I had it all listed out, but I was like, actually, it's better for you to walk through it all.
Basically, they're all kind of fairly formulaic. We kind of have a lot of the same items every year, but we might change some things around. The idea started. I'm going to take you back. So the idea started when I was planning that very first one, and I was like, I've been to collaboration brews and they're really boring, especially if you've got more than like 2 people on site.
So waiting, cleaning.
Once you've mashed in, you can't do any cleaning because, goodness me, what if someone gets caustic on them? So for insurance purposes, you get all your tanks clean beforehand. You do your mashing, you all stand around for an hour, you start the sparge, everyone looks at it, goes, that's a nice colour, and then it does that for an hour and a half.
Takes the photos.
It boils. You put some hops in, you take the photo, you start cleaning out the mash tun, you take some photos. It's boring.
Drink some water, and then you go.
Joy drinks the water.
Someone does the hydrometer drizzle drop, but we've got an Antoine car, so it's not even that. It's just you put it in and you press a button and it comes up. So you don't even get the exciting thing where you drop your old-fashioned.
No, not even got your hydrometer in there.
I love a hydrometer shot, and so I was a bit like, how do I was looking at at Sophie Duron's International Women's Unite website, and it was like, what are the original objectives? And it was like, it was a networking and kind of sharing of information. And I was like, okay, so I wanted it to be for women in the industry. And so that very first one I did. Now it's not just it's open to anyone that wants to come. If you're beer curious, you come along. But for that very first one, it was women in the industry. And it felt really, really important to me that if I was going to go to a fellow professional and say, take a day off work, but don't take a day off work, it's not holiday. I want your company to pay you to come here because this is going to have value for you and for them. I was like, how do I make this day a day that feels like it's got value? Not necessarily financial value, but when you come away, you go, yeah, I've got 3 new phone numbers in my pocket. I had a good chat with someone about drainage. I had another good chat with someone about this new product and they've been using it and I'm going to try it. And, someone's going to let me use their keg washer. And, that feeling of I'm building a network. And, so I was like, okay, I need to get people talking to each other because otherwise they're just going to come in 2s and 3s and sit talking to their 2s and 3s. And I need to keep people entertained. Otherwise they're going to drift off. I'm going to lose them or they'll just get drunk. So I was chatting to a girl in the pub and she's like, you could do a book club. I was like, oh, that's cute. And she was an English major. And I was like, can you do it for me? And she's like, yeah, we'll do a book club. And I was like, great. And then I got thinking about, well, we could do all these other little activities and workshops. And so the idea would be that you bring people together. Like when you do something next to someone else, you start talking, like especially if it's creative or out of your comfort zone, you talk to them, you exchange with them. So you might come with 2 or 3 friends from work, but if you're doing life drawing next to a complete rando, you'll look and be like, why has yours got 7 fingers? And have you seen mine? And you kind of all the barriers come down. And even though it doesn't feel like you're talking about work, what you're doing is you're fast tracking this relationship to a point where kind of all the barriers are down and you actually really can kind of dive straight into a relationship. I've used the word, but yeah, that. So we kind of just sort of started like playing around. We were just having fun. Me and Jen, who again, brewery owner, she's really good at events, she's a very creative lady, and I was like, I want to do this, and she was like, oh my god, yeah. And so between the 2 of us, we had life drawing and we had this and we had that and this and that. And so that was the first one. And we've kind of stuck with the same format over the years. So we always do a book club. We do life drawing. We couldn't do it this year because we ran out of time, which is a shame because life drawing is one of the most popular things we do. Jen does the life drawing. We've actually had to introduce like 2 sessions now because we can't get everyone into the one session. We normally do some sort of a dance or movement element. So this year it was belly dancing. Last year it was burlesque. The year before that we had Zumba, and the year before that we had yoga, but unfortunately the yoga teacher had COVID and had to cancel last minute. We try and do some kind of like entertainment, so maybe performance. We try and do creative-y bits and bobs. So we've had in the past, this year we had Lottie, who is a great character in the local craft beer industry in Brighton. Anyway, she runs a social meetup event at the Rook, the place that I talked about earlier, Craft Beer Social. They're on Instagram. She came along and did a fabric painting class, and so people did like denim fabric painted swatches. We had Joanne talking about Bart Haas and hops and new hop products. We had there's a local art collective called the Toad Lickers Collective, who I encountered because I was trying to sell them some beer.
I was wondering if there was any connection or if it was just completely random.
They hold a film night at this cool kind of quirky arty pub in town, and I was like,
you definitely need some Toad Liquor.
I'm going to say, hey, well, you should buy some of my beer for your amazing event. And they were like, no, probably not, but you seem cool. And so we made friends. I didn't sell any beer, but we made friends. That's nice.
That's the most important part.
Yeah, in fact, I ended up giving away beer because they did an art exhibition recently. I just gave them some beer. as a financial interaction, really didn't do me brilliantly. But I got more money out of it. I got the Toad Lickers, and so they came along and they did a really fantastic talk about women and brewing and the history of beer and women. And some local Sussex stories, which is really cool. I actually missed the talk, so I couldn't tell you what it was about. Couldn't get into the room.
I was going to say, it was so big. I stayed outside because the fact that it was so packed that I was just like, I'm going to let other people go in, and I'll sort of like step back.
I got my pizza while that was happening because I was just like, I'm going to let other people who haven't heard that before go in. Yeah.
So it was. I can't remember what else did we have.
Bitter Women Brewery making postcards.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
I made one because my plan is I've got all these lovely Polaroids that I've taken. I've got the one from the day. I've got us. We're so cute.
Yay!
And then me and Joe were so cute. And then
everyone's so cute.
So I thought I'll make a little. I put them all together so I could put it all on like a little framed thing. And actually, I might even take the can label off.
Yes,
and
put it in the background.
I've got 2 beers, so I might go. I was gonna say I've got 2 beers, so I might take the labels off and just kind of do that as the background on something, and then put that in front of it. But that's the one I made, which I will say I started off being like, I think I was sort of like chilling where everyone was having conversations, and I was like, I am awkward at the best of times, so what can I do? So I was like, I'll make one of these bad boys, and then I can be sort of like solo, but if someone's there, I'll talk to them. So that's what I started doing, and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I literally don't know what I'm gonna make. And then I just started putting things on it, and then I started talking exactly as you said. Then I started talking to other people around me, and people would come up, introduce themselves, and then be like, what are you making? I was like, I don't know. I'm seeing what sticks, and it seems to be working. So that was great. But I will say, like, what I think was impressive to me as well was there was such a mix of industry people and non-industry. Like, people would walk up and they'd be like, where do you work? And I'm like, I don't. And they're like, that's cool. Nice to meet you. And it was the biggest mix, I think, for me, of like industry and non-industry. And I ended up like making friends. Emma from Miracai's introducing me before I've even had a chance to introduce myself. So I've walked in and she's like, I already introduced you, so have a conversation. Because she's like, I knew you probably wouldn't do it, so I did it for you. So I made so many lovely, lovely friends. Met Katie. Katie was so cool. We we put the grains in together, so that was great. Such a lovely day.
Thank you. Yeah, it was lovely. It was wonderful. We had Joe. I forgot. I'm just trying to think about the other things we had. We had Joe wassailing to the yeast.
Wassailing, yeah, that was so
Which
good.
is, I'm a big fan of singing to the yeast as we pitch, because I feel like the Norwegians, they shout at the yeast to send it on its merry way and to scare away the evil demons, and I kind of love that.
I feel like yeast needs yelling at, right?
It does sometimes.
You should definitely sing or yell at your yeast.
Yeah.
And so we try and have an element of something like that. We've had Joe before. Last year we had a rapper come along and rap to the yeast as we pitched it.
That's cool.
That was pretty cool. And
we went for a beer with Jo afterwards, and she brought her own tankard. It was great.
She's amazing. She always brings her own tankard everywhere she goes.
It was great.
She's incredible.
Her tankard was so cool.
Yeah.
She has got her finger in so many pies.
Yeah.
She's like creative. She's really involved with like all the folk history stuff. She does these amazing siren women-led shanties in an old 200-year-old windmill in the middle of the downs, and she's the only one with a key. And you can go and sit by candlelight in the top of this windmill and do shanties, and there's no men allowed, and it's really good.
I want to hear her stories. That sounds amazing.
She's brilliant, and she's real punk. Like she really likes like the Cramps.
She gave that energy. I feel like
I saw her at a Cramps reunion gig recently, and she was like, "Oh my god, doesn't it just give you goosebumps?" And I was like, yeah, it's fine.
She does give badass. She gives like badass vibes, does. To be fair.
Like, just living her life.
Jo Goddard is incredible.
Yeah.
Jo Goddard is an absolutely incredible human being. And if we could all be a little bit more like Jo Goddard, we'd be the world better place.
You're Jane Payton. She was doing the book club.
Yeah, Jane did the book club.
That's another person. If the world would be a better place if there was more Janes in it. She was incredible. She did a book club about a book that literally no one had read. Even I only managed to read half of it. I finished it the other day, by the way. It was excellent.
I hadn't read it before, because by the time I realised, I was like, I have no time to read this. But I was like, I want to go and talk about it anyways. But I felt like, even though as a person sat in that room, even though there was a lot of people that maybe hadn't read it, the conversation was still really, like, people were still asking questions, they were still interacting, and everyone was very interested in the concept. And the way she described it, it was so good, because it's like you didn't have to read it to participate in the conversation.
Yeah, she's so fabulous. Like, Jane is
she's
someone
great.
that needs to be checked and protected.
The thick and the...
Thick and the Lean?
The Thick and the Lean, I think is what it was called. It's on my to-read list, and it's only because I can't audiobook it. It's on my
you got it there.
Hey!
So prepared. Look at you.
Use the self-made laptop.
The Thick and the Lean. Because I was going to say, that was then, after that conversation, definitely added to my to-read list. And then Emma from Mirakai also said that she was reading Memory Police, and then that went on my to-read list as well. So...
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
some
Emma's
really good stuff. Some really good conversation around.
Yeah, it was a lush day. It was a really lush day. So hopefully more of the same next year.
How far in advance do you have to plan for these things? I think that's my main question. It's because there's so much going on, and you always have, and you like, it's so much. It's so intricate, but like so. It feels very seamless, and I imagine to you it probably doesn't feel as seamless. To everybody else that's participating, it feels very seamless, very chill, very calm. You're like very demure, very mindful, very chill, so it's very good. But to you, I imagine it probably feels way more chaotic. But like, how far in advance do you have to plan something like this, and how do you find the people that you want to participate? Like the belly dancing, did you just go, I know I want to do belly dancing, or did you happen to see them? How did that all work?
Good question. It's a bit of a mixture. Now that we've got a formula and a kind of a format, it's much easier, because it's sort of like having a template or a framework that you can just pin things on. Yeah. So like if I have a schedule from last year, I'll just write over it and be like, okay, cool. And we kind of have a bit of a list. So we'll normally sit down around kind of like December time and kind of go, are we going to do it? Is everyone okay? If like this year it was weird because Women's Day fell on a Saturday. So it was like, are we going to do it on the Saturday? If not, are we going to do it on the Friday? Or are we going to do it on the Monday? Or are we going to do it the month before and bring it out? So we had a bit of a meeting about scheduling, and then it's quite simple, because you just basically go, well, book club's going to happen. I'll ask Jane if she's up for it. Live drawing's going to happen. That's Jen. So there's like normally, maybe a kind of an arts and crafty class. It's nice to have a techie element, sort of something that sort of is serious beer. So normally if we're working with someone, or if we have a sponsor or something like that, I'll kind of give them first dibs on having an opportunity to introduce a new product, or a process, or something like that, because we do still get a really huge turnout from industry, so it's sort of actually got a fair amount of value for them. A lot of home brewers as well. And then it will be a bit of like, okay, cool, well, if we're going to do a dancey thing, what have we done? Who do we know? We'll normally start with who do we know? Who do we know? Because we know some weirdos. We know some really great things. When I say weirdos, I mean
in the best possible way.
In the best way, yeah. No, I had to explain
Plural
something
weirdos.
at work. I had to explain to someone at work, we do like a weird or interesting fact, and then somebody told us recently that you can't say weird or interesting. You have to say like cool or interesting. And I was like, yeah, but weird is also cool. I was like, weird's good. Like good is weird. Like weird is good.
Yeah.
Like, should reclaim weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm feeling witchy anyway at the moment,
Right,
and I feel like I listened to a good podcast about witches recently, and about the root of witch and Wiccan coming from YW weird, like that, and it kind of it's not negative.
No,
I think
not at all.
It as a positive thing. But yeah, so when I say weird people, I mean like we the pub is full of really creative people. Like I think because it's such an unusual space. And like Jen and Clark, who own the pub and own the brewery, they're such creative people themselves. They've both come from a long background of like music and arts. So it just sort of really like attracts like a moth to a flame kind of creative people with interesting kind of endeavors and projects. So we'll often start with who do we know who's doing something cool. And then if it's, we'll kind of fill a few bits and bobs, like you are so and so that, and I'll ask so and so that, and then it'll be like, let's do a movementy thing. So this year I was like, well, belly dancing could be fun, and I literally Googled belly dancing in Brighton, and I found the first person at the top. I sent them an email and I was like, would you be prepared to do it? She was so lovely. Nadia, she was so amazing. She came along. We couldn't get her playlist to work on our music because like we had a different app, and like you can only stream to our speaker from one app. So I had to like we just stood there together furiously making
the playlist
on my Spotify. Like, give me another song, give me a belly dancey song, give me something else. And
again, in front of, like when I was doing it, would have had no idea that happened.
Didn't know.
Yeah, we literally had to make this belly. She'd had this whole thing ready to go, and then she turned up. She like couldn't do it, so she just had her phone across. And I was like, something else. Go on, one more. We've got about 15 minutes. Go on, one more. And I'll put it on loop. No one will notice. And so she was amazing. And at first I was a bit worried, like, because she sort of isn't obviously like a beer person and everything like that. Well, not obviously, but she's just not a beer person and everything like that. She was just doing it because it was Women's Day and it was a good cause and everything. But the name Shimmy Up came from the belly dancing. So we did a raffle at the end of the day, because Burning Sky very generously donated a whole bunch of gorgeous bottles, and we did a raffle for UNICEF. And at the end of the day, and at the end of the raffle, I was like, everyone was like, what are we calling the beer? I was like, I don't know. And so loads of people were shouting names out, and I was writing them all down, and about 80% of them had a connection to the break dancing next year.
Oh my God, yes.
About 80% had a connection to the belly dancing. So when I messaged her afterwards to say, thank you, I was like, oh, you might like to know this, but, we haven't named the beer yet, but loads of people, when I asked, suggested something to do with your class. So, you obviously had a huge impact. And she was like, this would be amazing. She got really, really into it. So she actually ended up coming, she came to the beer launch. She was about the only person that came, because no one ever comes to the beer launches, because they were in the middle of the afternoon on Saturday. And it's like me and Jen sitting in the pub on our own drinking like 9% beer, and then in walks Nadia and like an entire entourage of people that she's brought, because it's my beer. dancing beer.
That's
And they were all
so
like, yeah,
good.
I won and bought a pint. And I was like, this is amazing. and so it's fantastic. So what I love is that it kind of reaches beyond. It's a great thing for women in and around the beer world, but it's kind of fun for everyone. It reaches beyond it, and it creates links in places where you didn't know you needed them or wanted them. But I think that's kind of lovely. I think the more links that we all have, the better.
It was I think it was a really good day. And
Yeah.
belly dancing was just such a good laugh because all of us were there just like, I don't know. All of us were going like individually like, no, you're doing good. No, I'm doing shit. And everyone's like, no, I'm doing shit. And we just had such a laugh because it was so funny. And we're like, and then she had us all pick a move to go around and everyone's like, let's do a shimmy. And then it would go to something else. And then someone else would come up and be like, and another shimmy. So I think that's probably where Shimmy Up came because we all really, really, really enjoyed the shimmy aspect of it.
Oh yeah,
it was so good. Oh,
it was glorious.
I was just hid over in the corner waiting for the whirlpool to be ready to put the hops in. I'm like, I'm staying over here.
I was going to say, there was at one point, I think, Jo, while you were doing your talk, what made me laugh was, so Jo was doing the talk about the different ingredients and the liquid products. And
we did a bit of sensory training.
I was taking photos, and then eventually she was like, do you want to try one then? And I was like, yeah, right. So I was like, I want the green one. The green one looks good. There's all different colours.
Yeah.
For anyone that doesn't know, there was all different colour little tiny sample glasses.
Flavored
liquids. And I was like, I want the green one. That'll be fun. And she's like, no, that's too easy, and B, you'll like this one more. And she just gives me I would let her have the one she wanted. She goes, no, you can't have that one. You're going to have this one. And I was like, but I want the green one. And she's like, it's too easy, and this one is going to be the one that you enjoy more. And I was like, okay. And I sampled it, and I was like,
you won't like that one.
I actually really enjoyed this one. Thank you very much. And then I was I was like, this one could be. And then Sarah was convincing me it would make a really good candle set. And I was like, yeah, can I get this in a candle, please? This is amazing. I was like, it's cinnamon. It was like, no, it's gingerbread. It was gingerbread in the end. And she's like, you'll like this one. So I was very pleased with it. And then I saw you digging out the mash, Kate, and doing the forklift. And I was like, that's the most badass woman I've ever seen in my life. Like, I was stood from I was taking photos because I was like, A, these are going to be really great photos, and B, that's the most badass thing I've ever seen in my life. It's just,
can I just say,
getting in there.
The most badass woman that day was actually Loz, our brewer,
Loz is amazing.
He did the whole brew that day, and the motorised paddle on the mash tun wasn't working, so she had to manually mash in a huge grist. A double IPA is just so much malt. She manually mashed that in, and the only reason that I was in there was because I jumped in to help her on the digging out the mash tun, and we were tapping in and tapping out because there was so much malt to dig out. It just couldn't have been a one-person job. Honestly. And it was like, so yeah, I was helping, but she was leading. She is an absolute pocket rocket, that one.
She's amazing. Loz is great.
She's, an absolute badass. And she had a hangover.
Oh my god! How?
She did an amazing job.
How do you do that hungover as well? All of that.
She's so diligent, so amazing. She'd stayed late the night before. She's like, I just want to make everything right for you, Kate. I just want everything to be nice. I'm going to stay. I'm going to get this ready. And I was like, you don't have to. I'm not doing it. I'm coming in early. She said, no, I've got to get this done anyway. I'm going to do this. And she stayed late on the whatever it was, Thursday night.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, well, we're driving in the morning early. Do you want a lift? You're welcome to come in like normal start of shift time. But if you want to come in early and get a lift over with us, then you're welcome to. And you can have a cup of coffee and relax a bit before it all starts. And she was like, yeah, great. So we picked her up and she's like white as a sheet. I was like, I left you last night and you were so like invested in everything.
Yeah.
But she's like, she's just absolute.
Yeah. Wouldn't have ever gone hangover because I genuinely feel like just Hand feels, if I was going to dub any brewery a brewery of badasses, it would probably be Hand. And I'm not saying that because of like friend anything like that. Genuinely brewery of badasses. Every single person that I spoke to, interacted with, like in that brewery was just so lovely, so nice. Like that is immense. Absolutely immense. It was such a good day. massively encourage everyone to do it. The only reason I hadn't done it sooner was because I was like, just how far away it was, and then the logistics of it, and then I was like, do I stay over? And then it's bleh. So I was like, next year, after doing it this year, I'll probably definitely do it again next year as well, because it's just
Good.
so you make it worth the travel. Like it's such a good
thank
day. You make it worth the travel, and this beer is amazing. So everyone should go and check it out.
Thank you. Who knows what we'll make next year? Who knows? It's 6 months away. That's
There might be
terrifying.
another.
I don't like that. I don't like that. 6 months away.
There might be another
Sorry,
new hop
Yeah,
named
it is, yeah.
by then, so there might be
Sorry?
there might be another new hop named by then. Like new, as in people have been using it, but it might have its name by that time. So
what kind of style of beer might it lend itself to? Is it
I
like
mean,
vibe, or is it?
People keep using it for New England's and juicy things, but I really want. It's got a bit of a blackcurranty note to it. I'd love to see it in a stout. Yeah, I palmed some off on old Damo at Emperor's and was like, "Put that in a stout for me, please." And I don't know if he ever did.
Oh gosh, I love his beers.
Don't we all? We all do.
If I could have gone
Just
to
accept
a
it.
Women's Day that wasn't my Women's Day, I would have probably gone to the one that Kimberly
Yes,
organised.
that would look great as well. There's so many good ones this year.
There was a lot.
Yeah,
I think that the women, if we're talking about Women's Day, I think you can't do it without giving a huge shout out to Women on Tap and the role they've played this year. I think Sophie and her team over the last 10 years have done an amazing job, but there was definitely this feeling like we've all just got other stuff to be doing right now.
People are
and
busy.
I think Women on Tap have just really like leaned into it. I felt like for most of January, I felt like I was late with my homework. Like,
Really?
I'm at my normal pace. Why are you promoting this? I haven't even started thinking about it. And they were so good. They were so on it. And there's been, I mean, I don't know if there's been more women's brew days or I've just heard about more women's brew days, but it's been absolutely brilliant. And they are a force to be reckoned with. And I think it's kind of what was needed, like a big old shake up. I think Rachel's another one of those.
Yeah.
Powerhouses.
Just get them done.
Make things happen.
Getting it done.
Yeah.
So some of the profits from the beer are going to
Women in
cause. They are going to Women in
Beer.
Beer. Lovely.
So we are, we do £500, and it's going to go to Women in Beer for their mentorship program. Which I'm a mentor in.
I was going to say, are you mentoring?
I was going to say you're a mentor.
Oh, yes, you are.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
mentoring. You're mentoring our friend Katie. And
do you know Katie?
We know Katie. Yeah. And when I saw it was you two together, I was like, "Oh, that's dangerous in the best kind of way."
I don't know anyone in England. I'm like, you know this person, all these people.
Yeah, but she was in Ireland for ages, and now she's come back again.
Yeah. She's we had our first session the other day. She's fantastic. It's obviously a private conversation, but I feel very much like she should be mentoring me. What an absolute
I was going to say, I feel like you guys would get on.
We met Katie at an international
Women's Collaboration Brew Day. Yeah,
and like Katie.
Saying that, it's like I feel like you could get, like you guys would get on as well, for sure.
Great. Yeah, I'm very proud. I think is the right word, to be doing it again, to be asked to be doing it again. I got so much out of doing it last year. I had a mentee up in Scotland called Holly, and we're still in touch. We're hopefully working together. I'm going up in May, and hopefully we're trying to organise a collab together, and possibly like a tap takeover at the Hanging Bat where she works.
Amazing,
awesome.
And the calibre of the mentees is so high. It's like huge. You just get like this massive imposter syndrome. You read their CVs, you're like, oh.
You're like me. You are okay. All right.
You're a previous nominee of Brewer of the Year. Be quiet.
Well,
absolutely true.
shortlisted.
Exactly.
I think I
Join that
might be
shortlisted club with us.
Shortlisted club's a really great club to be in because it was a really tough competition.
Who's to say? They didn't give the ranking of the other three. So,
Exactly. And I will say that actually, I've called it out when I did an interview with Kimberly for the Guild of Beer Writers, and I'll say it again, like, massive thank you to Kate, because the reason that, you know, I joined the Guild for the podcast was because of the conversation we had when we were both there for the Brave Noise event on the drunken tube ride back, and you were like, listen, you should just do it. What do you have to do? And I was like, yeah, what do I have to? And it hung with me in the back of my head, and I kept putting it off, and then eventually I was like, I'm just gonna do it. But the only
you were shortlisted for awards this year as well.
Yeah, well, you're in decent company.
Yeah,
I was gonna say you're in good company, and I was like, decent company. You're in decent company.
It's nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know what it's all about. Like, I just sort of sit there and think, what's I think probably the real brewers of the year is the ones we never hear about. I got messaging with Dominic, who actually won.
Yeah.
Because we were both on the shortlist together, and we were messaging about it, and he was like, I feel like 20 years ago I deserved this, when I was spending all day cleaning casks.
Yeah.
And like, no, I don't know if I do now. And I sort of feel the same, like maybe not 20 years ago, because I was, as discussed, I was somewhere else in the world doing something completely unrelated. But yeah, I do feel it's really nice. Like, it's overwhelmingly nice to be nominated or shortlisted for one of those categories, one of those awards. And like, the feminist in me is like, you should embrace it, and you should roar, and you should shout it from the rooftops. But I think the collaborative brewer in me that knows how hard every single brewer in this country works says absolutely no way. Hell no, am I the brewer of the year? It's nice. It's nice to have someone say, I think you are for me.
It's like, I felt like it when I said, like, oh, it was just a really nice thing to be nominated. I was like, I'm not saying that because of the fact that it sounds like like what you're supposed to say. I was like, I genuinely mean, like, when I looked at the people we were nominated against, I was like, oh, this is nice to just have my name next to theirs. Like, that's really cool. And I was like, very cool.
Having my name mentioned in sentence with these people is great. Yeah. It's fine. This is winning for me. This is the prize.
But I was like, I don't mean that in a sarcastic way. I don't mean that in a way of like that stereotypical, like, I think I should say this. I was like, I genuinely mean it's just very nice to be listed alongside these people. Very cool. Like, that was all I knew. But the only reason I was there was from our first conversation. Drunken tube ride back, it was great, so big recommend. Any final ones? I mean, Joe, do you have any other questions before I say
I have no other questions, but is there anything you want to plug right now, other than obviously everyone needs to go and buy Shimmy Up? We'll put that link in the show notes. Anything else you want to plug?
And join International Women's Collaboration next year.
No, I'm really, really happy to just focus on plugging Shimmy Up at the moment. We've got I'd say, from a trade perspective, our beers are available. We're on Cellar and we're on Ebria. It's a more reduced list on Ebria. And obviously, if you can just contact me and we can deal direct with people if they don't like those things, that's fine. So yeah, we're really looking to, this year I really want us to grow outside of Sussex. So I guess what I'm really, really hoping for is to try and form collaborations with other breweries and bars and bottle shops and people interested in brewing wonderful beers with a wicked little brewery down on the south coast. I'm finding the more collaborations I do, the more I'm learning. They're really, really, really good for just like exchanging of information and gossip, of course. The most important. So yeah, I'd really like, if there's anyone listening and they think, oh, she seems all right, I'd love to be in touch with more breweries and working on collabs.
Amazing. Everyone contact Kate for a collab because it's a good time.
The beers are great. The collab time is great.
There's not live drawing at every single one, but you'll get a good beer out of it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming
Thank you
back on
so
again.
much. And for giving us 2 hours instead of 1 hour.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Thank you for giving me 2 hours. I hope
course.
someone listens to it. That's a lot.
Oh, they will.
People
They
will.
will. Anytime, you're always welcome back.
Oh, thank you. It's been so much fun. I'm so done now.
Oh my God, I love Kate.
Genuinely. Just so good. Such good. I didn't even get to say I'm drinking. I bought a hand. When I ordered the beers, I also bought myself a hand glass.
Do you get a wiener dog glass?
I got a wiener dog glass. Very exciting. Very excited about it.
Like their can art is always so good. Like if you're not watching the video, then you're not going to see. But it's
I didn't
always
even
so
get
good.
to ask what went into it.
Yeah.
We talked for so much about so many amazing things. We ran out of time, but I really wanted to ask about like how they go into the
We're just going to about after
labels. But yeah, because it's not just this
Again.
one, it's every layer. So this is the toad liquor one.
So that one, my work colleague absolutely loves that artist. And so when I was there the last time, he was like, can you get me a can of that? Because it had just come out. And so I was talking to Kate and I was like, can I buy a can of that? And she was like, I mean, you can just have one, but yeah. And she's like, oh, I've got some posters of that in the back. Do you want one?
Do you get the
And I was
poster?
like, yes. So I ended up taking a poster back for Alex. And I was like, here is your beer. And also, here is your poster. And he was super excited.
So I was going to say, we got the toad liquor. We got like Bird's label.
Yeah.
It's their bitter. That's a really good one. Just like genuinely, just...
So good.
Amazing label work. It's always so good, and I always love that they put like the details of what's in it on there. As I said on the recording, it was so good. But I wanted to ask about like how they came up with that specific design for Shimmy Up, because the colors are so great. I feel like the colors represent us really great as well, because there's like the purples and the light, the light purples, the dark purples, the blacks and the reds, and missing a little bit, a touch of pink, but that's okay. But all this is like so great for us. So
yeah, it's so good. So good. I love it. And I didn't get a chance to say it, but I believe the root of the word weird means one who is in control of their destiny.
I like that. So even if that's not
so I felt like
we're going with
works
that anyways.
Quite well with what we were talking about. So
I never get it when people are like, you can't say weird. That's like as if it's a negative thing. I was like, I don't view that as a negative thing. I view it as a really positive thing. Yeah. So I guess we're all weird
together.
We're all weird together, and I'd rather be in weird company than non-weird company. So, Joe, if people want to talk to you about the root of the word weird, where can people talk to you?
I mean, I think I read that somewhere, so I've given you that information. That's
I hope that you just like saw it on Google or something, and then you're like, it's fact.
No, I definitely read it somewhere reputable. But if you feel like you're a weirdo, you can come and talk to me about us equally being weirdos. As long as you're like in the same kind of weirdo spectrum as we are, like the craft beer weirdo spectrum, the book reading spectrum, weirdo spectrum, the niche crafts spectrum, weirdo spectrum. Join us there. Come and talk to me about that. I love beer learning on Instagram. I'm on Facebook as well, but you'll probably find me more easily on Instagram. Or you can come to my website, which is lovebeerlearning.co.uk, or you can email me lovebeerlearning@gmail.com, or you could email both of us if you also equally want to talk to both of us about being a craft beer weirdo. And you can do that at A Woman's Brew on Instagram and Facebook. We're on Blue Sky.
We are. No, we've not posted anything on Blue Sky, but we have it. It exists. It exists. We do have a Blue Sky.
We got
a website.
We've got a website. What's our website, Tori?
awomensbrewpod.beer. I love it, like we do, yeah. And what would that link be?
And also you can email us at womensbrewpodcast@gmail.com. We will get back to you there. Tori, if people want to talk to you about your belly dancing experience, where can I get hold of you?
I feel like I probably would have been really adequate at burlesque. I probably would have been. That's probably more something I probably would have thrived at. Belly dancing, I just was like, this was so much fun, but also I am so bad at this, like so bad. It's laughable, but that's why I'm having fun, because I'm so bad.
Be good at something to enjoy it.
Though. Yeah, well, yeah,
For it to be
that is
fun.
it was very fun, and it was a really good laugh. So if anyone wants to talk to me about it, I will keep all the photos and videos hidden, but I will talk to you about it. You can find me on Instagram at adventures_in_optimism. You can email me at adventuresinoptimism@gmail.com, because that's the only places you can get me. Actually, I've got a blog now.
You've got a blog.
I've got a blog now that I've only put a handful of things on, but it's more than I did last year. So that's adventuresinoptimism.com. So you can go check out whatever I post on there as well. So yeah, that is that. I mean, my beer's already gone, so
Mine's nearly gone. We're going to go finish these. We're going to go enjoy the wonderful can art. Cheers.
Cheers.